You're born in a small town in rural Oregon. Your father is a traveling preacher who moves the family from church to church, never staying long enough to build real relationships. Your mother suffers from chronic depression and finds solace in whatever spiritual movement promises healing and purpose. You grow up in revival tents and community centers, watching your father captivate audiences with charismatic sermons about salvation and transformation. You learn early that people are desperate to believe in something larger than themselves. You're 8 when you first notice your father's techniques, the way he studies the crowd before speaking, identifying the lonely, the broken, the searching, how he adjusts his message based on their reactions, speaking directly to their deepest fears and desires. The careful timing of emotional peaks and valleys, the use of music, lighting, and group dynamics to create transcendent experiences. You think every child grows up understanding the mechanics of mass persuasion. School feels pointless when you already know the most important lesson. People will follow anyone who promises them meaning. While other kids struggle with math and reading, you're analyzing human psychology and group behavior. You start small experiments, convincing classmates to join made-up clubs, organizing activities around fabricated purposes. You discover that the content of belief matters less than the intensity of conviction. Your teenage years are spent watching your father's ministry slowly fail. His sermons become repetitive, his charisma fades with age, and congregations dwindle as members move on to newer, more exciting spiritual leaders. He becomes bitter and alcoholic, ranting about ungrateful followers who abandoned him after he gave them everything. You realize that spiritual authority is temporary unless it's constantly renewed and expanded. College opens your eyes to the sophisticated techniques of influence and control. Psychology courses teach you about cognitive biases, social conformity, and the conditions that make people susceptible to authoritarian leadership. You study historical cults and religious movements, analyzing what made some leaders successful while others failed. You're not planning anything specific. You're just fascinated by the science of belief. Your first followers come naturally. College students dealing with existential anxiety, family problems, and uncertainty about the future. They're attracted to your confidence, your apparent answers to life's biggest questions, and your ability to make them feel special and chosen. You start holding informal discussion groups in your dorm room, talking about consciousness, reality, and human potential. Word spreads about the charismatic philosophy student who has profound insights about existence. You develop a coherent belief system that borrows from Eastern mysticism, New Age spirituality, and pop psychology. The core message is simple. Humans are living far below their potential, trapped by social conditioning and limiting beliefs. Through proper training and guidance, people can unlock extraordinary abilities, heightened awareness, psychic powers, perfect health, unlimited success. You're not selling religion, you're selling human optimization. Your group grows to 50 members by senior year. They call you teacher and hang on every word of your weekly lectures. You establish simple rules. Regular meditation practice, dietary restrictions that supposedly enhance spiritual development, and gradual disconnection from negative influences like family members who don't understand the teachings. Nothing seems extreme. It's just people choosing to live more consciously. After graduation, 25 core followers move with you to a rural compound in Northern California. They pool their resources to purchase land and build a self-sufficient community dedicated to spiritual development. Everyone contributes according to their abilities. Some work outside jobs to fund the community, others manage daily operations, and a few focus entirely on advanced spiritual practices under your direct guidance. The community structure becomes more sophisticated. New members go through orientation programs that gradually introduce them to deeper teachings and higher levels of commitment. You establish a hierarchy of advancement, with longtime followers earning privileged positions and access to secret knowledge. People work harder and sacrifice more to prove their dedication and climb the spiritual ladder you've created. You realize that control comes not through force, but through making people want to surrender their autonomy. You provide meaning, community, and identity to people who felt lost and alone. In exchange, they give you their time, money, and decision-making authority. It's a voluntary transaction. But the terms become increasingly one-sided as members invest more of themselves in the community. The psychological techniques become more sophisticated. You study each member's personality, background, and vulnerabilities, tailoring your approach to their specific needs. For the lonely, you provide family. For the ambitious, you offer spiritual advancement. For the traumatized, you promise healing. Everyone gets what they need most, but only through total commitment to you and the community. Money flows in from multiple sources. Members donate their savings, salaries from outside jobs, and inheritance from family members. You establish businesses that provide both income and job training for followers, organic farming, construction, alternative healing services. But the community becomes economically self-sustaining while generating significant profits that fund expansion and your increasingly luxurious lifestyle. Your personal life becomes complicated by your growing power. Relationships with followers are inherently unequal. They see you as enlightened, while you see them as psychological puzzles to solve. You begin selecting certain female members for special spiritual instruction that includes sexual initiation. You convince them that physical intimacy with an enlightened being accelerates their spiritual development. The community expands to 300 members across multiple properties. You establish recruitment programs targeting colleges, spiritual centers, and personal development workshops. Professional recruiters trained in your methods identify and cultivate potential members. The process takes months, slowly building trust, introducing concepts gradually, and creating emotional dependency before revealing the full commitment expected. Your teachings evolve to justify increasing control over members' lives. You claim that attachment to family relationships holds back spiritual progress. Contact with the outside world corrupts the pure consciousness you're developing within the community. Critical thinking and questioning authority are signs of spiritual immaturity. Members who express doubts are subjected to intensive counseling designed to break down their resistance. The outside world begins taking notice. Families file missing persons reports when adult children disappear into your community. Former members speak to journalists about psychological manipulation and financial exploitation. Anti-cult activists organize protests outside your properties. You respond by increasing security, limiting outside contact, and teaching followers that persecution proves they're doing important spiritual work. Law enforcement starts investigating after allegations of financial fraud and child abuse. You've been accepting children into the community and subjecting them to the same isolation and indoctrination as adult members. Former teachers report that children receive minimal education and are trained to see you as a divine figure who deserves absolute obedience. Social services begins removal proceedings for dozens of minors. Your inner circle begins showing signs of strain. Longtime followers who helped build the community are expressing private doubts about your increasingly erratic behavior and grandiose claims. You respond by purging suspected dissidents and promoting newer, more fanatical members to positions of authority. The paranoia becomes self-fulfilling as your actions create the disloyalty you feared. The federal investigation expands when authorities discover you've been using community resources to purchase weapons and surveillance equipment. You convince followers that the government is planning to attack the community and everyone must prepare for self-defense. The preparation becomes an obsession as you design elaborate security protocols and conduct military-style training exercises. Your mental state deteriorates under the pressure of maintaining absolute authority over hundreds of people. You become convinced that enemies are everywhere, in the government, the media, even within your own community. Sleep deprivation, drug use, and the psychological stress of living a complete lie take their toll. You begin making increasingly irrational demands and threatening violence against anyone who challenges your authority. The crisis comes when a group of longtime followers decides to leave the community. You can't allow their defection because it would encourage others and expose you to legal liability. You order loyal members to physically prevent the departures, leading to confrontations that quickly escalate into violence. Someone calls law enforcement, triggering the raid you've been preparing for. The siege lasts 18 days. Federal agents surround your compound while you broadcast rambling messages about persecution and martyrdom. Inside, frightened followers debate whether to surrender or fight. But you've convinced them that leaving means spiritual death and that law enforcement will kill them regardless. The situation becomes a standoff between your paranoid delusions and the outside world's attempts at peaceful resolution. The end comes suddenly when a fire breaks out during negotiations. Whether started accidentally or deliberately remains unclear, but it spreads quickly through buildings you've modified to be defensible rather than safe. 73 people die in the flames, including 25 children who never had a choice about joining your community. You survive but are severely burned and immediately taken into custody. The trial becomes international news as prosecutors detail the systematic exploitation and abuse you inflicted on hundreds of followers over 15 years. So survivors testify about financial manipulation, sexual coercion, child abuse, and psychological control techniques that destroyed their ability to think independently. The defense argues you're mentally ill, but the evidence shows calculated predatory behavior over decades. You're sentenced to life in prison without parole for murder, fraud, child abuse, and conspiracy charges. The judge notes that you exploited people's deepest spiritual needs for personal gain and power. Families of victims give impact statements describing loved ones who died believing you were leading them to enlightenment. Some survivors still defend you, proving that your psychological control persists even after your conviction. Prison is an education in powerlessness. Yet you're isolated in protective custody because other inmates despise cult leaders who harm children. No followers visit or send money. No one hangs on your words or seeks your guidance. You're just another aging inmate with a notorious past, facing the rest of your life in a concrete box with nothing but your thoughts and regrets. Your former community becomes a cautionary tale studied by psychologists, law enforcement, and religious scholars. The compound is demolished, but videos of your sermons circulate online, analyzed for their manipulation techniques. Former members write books and give interviews, helping others recognize the warning signs of authoritarian spiritual groups. Some survivors rebuild their lives successfully, while others struggle with depression, trust issues, and the challenge of making decisions after years of surrendering their autonomy to you. Children who grew up in the community face particular difficulties integrating into normal society. They lost their formative years to your delusions and must learn basic social skills as adults. New cults emerge constantly, led by charismatic figures who study your methods and promise to avoid your mistakes. They use more sophisticated psychological techniques, better legal protection, and improved public relations. The human needs you exploited, meaning community transcendence, remain constant, ensuring a steady supply of vulnerable people seeking answers from someone confident enough to provide them. Your letters from prison go unanswered. Former followers have moved on with their lives, and their families want nothing to do with reminders of the trauma you caused. You write manifestos explaining your actions and predicting vindication, but no one publishes them. The world has forgotten about you except as a symbol of how spiritual authority can become dangerous when combined with narcissism and unchecked power. Somewhere right now, a charismatic individual is gathering followers around profound-sounding teachings about human potential and spiritual truth. They're studying your mistakes and promising to create a better, more enlightened community. They believe they're different, that their intentions are pure, that they won't let power corrupt their mission. They have no idea they're walking the same path that led you to a prison cell and 73 graves. This story is fiction, but cult manipulation is real. The psychological techniques are real. The vulnerability of people seeking meaning is real. And somewhere right now, someone is surrendering their autonomy to a leader who promises enlightenment but delivers only exploitation, just like your followers once did.